thank Bernie and Barbara Cooper for hosting this. And there was people on the host committee, I have their names here so I don't forget anyone. Tammy and Randy Danover, Dan and Jane Jan Whetstone, sorry, Eric and Ann Rosenthal, Bob and Patty Klaus, and Steve and Connie Armstrong. They're on the host committee. I would like to thank you very much for doing that. And thank everyone for coming tonight. I know it's cold, it's the holiday season, and you're all very busy, but to take your time out and come here and talk about our problems that we have in the federal government, God knows there's plenty of them. I appreciate it very much. Before I get started, I just want to introduce a few people that are here in the room. My wife, Karen, here in the multiple colored coat. In the corner is my business partner, Ed Graham. Ed, it's an interesting but true story. I remember when I walked into his office, I said, Ed, I'm running for the United States Congress. He said, oh, that's great. The next day, he walks into my office with a check for $5,000, and he hands it to me, and he said, Rod, I'll support you, I'll do anything that you need to have done, but I gotta tell you, you're not gonna win. I said, well, thanks for the check, I appreciate it, why aren't I gonna win? He said, you have a fatal flaw for politics. He said, you're honest. True story. Dan Zomba is here, who is a state senator from this area, and Dan, you wanna say a couple words?
Just from that, Rod, if I may have
sure, yeah, please do.
I'll stay here, Rod. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
I'm Dan Zomba. I represent Senate District 48, which is northern Lynn County up into Delaware, Jones, and Buchanan. And when I was young, first of all, I want to give my parents a lot of credit. They're both deceased now, but they taught me a lot. But one of the things I learned from them at a very young age is they said, Dan, circle yourself with good people. Just always circle yourself with good people, and those people may need to change. And I ran into this guy during primary season a year ago. I had a primary, Rod had a primary, and actually Karen and I ended up pounding posts together, putting signs up in some of the similar areas. And it didn't take me very long to realize that this is a guy I could circle myself with. And I look at the values that this guy holds, they're identical to mine. He knows how to work really hard. He has common sense. He has work ethic. He's honest. And this is a guy I want to represent me in Washington. And I hope the folks in my district feel that I carry that in Senate District 48, and I think this is a guy that can carry that. And beyond that, we've got to have somebody who's going to beat the Democrats. We know the primary is a primary, and there's going to be some darts thrown on the same side, and all of those things. Those are primaries are primaries. But we want the guy that's going to beat the Democrats. That's what I want to stand.
Appreciate it. Good to see you. Also, we have Ken Reiser. Ken, you want to wave to everybody? He's running for the state house, correct?
That's right.
And your district is?
District 68, Marion, Bertram, and Ely.
And Ken is a veteran of our armed forces, correct?
Yep.
How many years and what branch?
25 years in the Air Force, retired as a colonel in 2012.
Yeah, Ken's a great man. We also have Bob Anderson. Where's Bob at? Bob's a member of the State Central Committee, and he's running for the Iowa State Senate, correct?
Senate,
and you have some of Johnson County.
About half of Johnson and Washington and Keokuk.
Okay. Good. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it very much. And Paul Smith is our Director of Field Operations for our campaign. Paul is a Hillsdale College graduate, and most recently worked on Senator Ted Cruz's campaign down in West Texas. He was one of 5 field directors for Senator Cruz. And you're the reason he got elected, correct?
The only reason.
And is Annie here? Annie Nesbitt back in the corner there is from Loras College in Dubuque, and she's a volunteer on our staff now. Annie's from Chicago, and we took her last week to a house party that was held for us in Waverly, Iowa, on a farm. So we're out in a rural area, and she told us when she got in the house, she said, Rod, I've never been on a gravel road in my life. True story. And last, Joel McGuire. Where's Joel? Joel right here, and it is, I can't remember your name. James. They're from Cole College, Republicans. Yes, there are Republicans in college. So we've been working with Cole College, I've been working with Loras College in Dubuque, The UNI College Republicans, they've got a great group going, you've got a great group going. So it's good to see there are some conservatives and some Republicans on college campuses. So I think I've got everybody I need to introduce. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my background, tell you why I ran, tell you what I believe in. I grew up, born and raised in Dubuque, Iowa. My parents had 10th grade educations. My father quit school in the 10th grade to go fight in World War II in the United States Navy. Then my mother quit school in the 10th grade to marry my father before he shipped out. And they weren't educated, but they had a lot of common sense. And they taught me, I believe, common sense and hard work and the value of $1. We had dirt floors in most of our house in Dubuque, Iowa. And my dad, he was kind of crafty because it was against the law in the city to raise chickens. And he had a great idea. He said, I'm going to raise chickens in the attic. So we raised chickens in the attic of our house in the city of Dubuque, and we all had, there's 4 boys, we all had our pet chicken. And I can remember I was 6 years old, and I came home from first grade, and it's like, where's my chicken? I'm upstairs to feed him. Well, yeah, we all know where the chicken was. It was on the dinner table that night. My mother's 84 years old now, and lives in her own home in Dubuque, Iowa. My father passed away 30 years ago. In fact, my mother, I promised her today, when I stopped by her house for lunch, I'd tell you this joke. She's got this little wicked sense of humor, and she thinks she's really funny. I said, okay, I promise, I'll tell him the joke. Democrat and a Republican are at lunch together. And the Democrat said, hey, guess what? I got a brand new hearing aid. The Republican says, oh, good for you. That's great. He says, you know what the best news is? It was free. Didn't pay a cent for it because of Obamacare. The Republican said, well, good for you. That's really good for you. He said, what kind is it? He said, about 1:15 after 1. So I'll tell my mother you like that too. I went to Lourdes College in Dubuque, got an undergraduate degree in finance. Went to the University of Dubuque, got a master's degree in business, and then I set out. I had no college debt because I was kind of old-fashioned. I worked weekends and I worked nights, part-time jobs. Didn't spend much money other than on beer. Okay, I'm a human being. There was a time in my life when I thought Samuel Adams was just a beer. I found out later it's actually one of our founding fathers. Graduated from college and worked on my version of the American Dream. I ended up at a company named SiteCare Systems in Dubuque. You may have heard of them. They're a data processing provider to medical groups around the United States, the largest. When I went there, we were 200 employees. When I left there, we were 1,300 employees, and we were on the New York Stock Exchange by that time. So I got an MBA in the academic world and an MBA in the real world, I like to say. Then I left to become the 5th employee at Eagle Point Software. And I became the president of that company and a major shareholder, and we grew from 5 employees to 375 employees in 5 years. So we had caught, as they say, lightning in a bottle. And the company was worth nothing, basically, when I got there. And we went public on the NASDAQ Stock Exchange, and our market cap at one time was about $110 million. So we had a great team there. It wasn't because of me. I assembled a great team, and I was fortunate enough to be named Iowa Entrepreneur of the Year in 1994. Like I like to tell people, I know what it's like to meet a payroll because I've done it every week for 23 years. I know what it's like to balance a budget because I've done it every month for 23 years. I know what it's like to operate and grow a business from nothing when you're signing personal guarantees to the bankers. Okay, and you have to deal with the rules, the regulations, the taxations, and the burdens that the federal government puts in front of you as somebody that just wants to live your version of the American dream and grow a business. So I've been through that. I think we need more people in Washington, D.C. with Meta Payroll who have operated in the private sector and the real world. So I'm a career businessman, and last cycle, Barack Obama, I couldn't take it anymore, like most of you, I'm sure. And I thought, no matter what measure you want to take of this country and its people, we are heading in the wrong direction. And I said to my wife, Karen, I said, I'm going to run for United States Congress. Bruce Braley is as liberal as they get. He comes back, sounds moderate, goes and votes with Nancy Pelosi 97.3% of the time. So I decided to run for Congress. Well, I didn't know what I didn't know about this crazy world of politics. We had no fundraising apparatus last time. We had no organization, and I had no name ID outside the city of Dubuque. No one knew what it was. Other than that, as they say, other than that, how'd you like to play, Mrs. Lincoln? So I started traveling around, putting windshield miles on. Our campaign staff was my wife Karen and our 13-year-old daughter Sophie, literally around the kitchen table. We did everything. And eventually, we were running against Ben Lang, and eventually, well, I would go out and they'd say, what's your name? I'd say, I'm Rob Blum. What are you running for? I'd say, United States Congress. And they'd look at me and they'd say, we already have a candidate. I remember calling Karen from the car saying, I'm getting awful lonely out here on the campaign trail. But eventually our message caught on. We almost upset Ben. We lost 52 to 48%. And in fact, we won Lynn County. So thank you very much, those of you who supported me and voted for me. What caught on was our message, and that message became the 5 cornerstones of our campaign. I'll go over them briefly. First cornerstone, personal responsibility. I think we all agree it has left the building in Washington, D.C. We have an administration, do we not, that is actively promoting and marketing dependence on the federal government. 48 million Americans on food stamps, 75 million Americans on Medicaid. All told, we have over 100 million of our fellow citizens receiving some type of federal welfare. Now, I think that is immoral. I think being dependent on the government eats away at human dignity and eats away at self-esteem. And we've got to stop that. For 235 years, we had an equation, I think, that worked pretty well in this country. On one side of the equation was hard work and effort and education, and on the other side of the equation was reward. Hard work and effort, get good education, is reward. And it worked. Pretty simple thing, it's worked for 235 years. Now we have an administration who says, we don't need the hard work and the effort or the education. You're entitled to the reward. You're entitled to the reward. Tom Vilsack, our former governor, he's now Secretary of Agriculture Department, right? If you go to their website, they're in charge of food stamps. He said, one of the things we have to overcome to get more people on food stamps, this is true, I can't make this up, we have to overcome is American pride. American pride. They want to overcome American pride to get people dependent on the federal government. And to make matters worse, you know now, it pays more not to work than to work. Independent voters, people ask me, how are we going to get independent voters? That's one thing that really upsets your average independent voter, is that fact. It now pays about $35,000 a year to stay in bed in the morning and to not get up and go to work. The average person in this country takes home $32,400 a year. So people with the young people go, why work? Why would you work? We need to show young people, all people, a pathway to independence, not to dependence. Do you know how many federal welfare programs there are? 80. Do you know how many have a work requirement? 2 out of 80. Okay, we need to reconnect that equation that hard work equals reward. You know, the days of the free lunch are over. Secondly, I believe in constitutionally limited government. Constitutionally limited government. Thomas Jefferson said it best, and I'll paraphrase, when he said, there are 2 types of people that can do harm to the great citizens of this nation. One are criminals, and the second is government. Let us bind the second group down with the change of the Constitution so they don't become legalized members of the first group. Legalized criminals. Is that not where we're at today, my friends? When I talk to Republican groups, I always get asked, Rob, how can Barack Obama get away with Benghazi? How can he get away with the wiretaps on the AP reporters? How can he get away with selectively enforcing Obamacare? How can he get away with not enforcing DOMA, the Defense of Marriage Act? How can he get away with not deporting illegal immigrants? How can he just build a blank in? It's amazing the lawlessness of this imperial presidency we have. I like to go and reestablish that Congress is relevant. The House of Representatives is relevant. And we need to let this guy know he's not the only show in town. So it's unbelievable. It's really a concern how lawless it has gotten. Constitutionally limited government. Do you know how much of our GDP is government spending? 40%. 40%. So half of our economy is government spending. That's like taking money out of his pocket and putting it in his pocket. Transfer of wealth. When you rob from Peter to pay Paul, you always have the support of Paul, correct? Ronald Reagan was right when he said, No government, no nation can tax and spend its way to prosperity. Correct? This transfer of wealth is 40% of our GDP being government. We have got to get the private sector going again and get the government as a smaller percentage of that GDP. Third item, and Bernie was talking about this. I have my Marco Rubio water break here. His infamous water break. Fiscal sanity. I used to say fiscal common sense. That's out the window. Just can we be sane about this? Okay, fiscal sanity. We have over $17 trillion in debt, right? And what's our national economy? $16.5 trillion is what that is annually. So we now have debt that's greater than our economy. And you might say, who cares? So what? What difference does that make? Well, that percentage is 107%. Okay, most economists don't agree on most things, but they do agree on this. When that percentage gets over 80%, bad things happen. And what's the bad thing that happens? Slow economic growth. Greece, we all heard about Greece, right? Greece, 160% is their ratio. Italy, 125, 130%. United States of America, 107%. We're on the same glide path as those countries that are in fiscal and financial trouble. The reason this economy is so bad is because one of the reasons we have so much debt. We've got to get this debt under control, do we not? I went back and looked at Reagan's recovery. Okay, 64 months after the recession ended under Ronald Reagan, okay, he had 9.5% more jobs than when the recession started. If we applied that to Barack Obama, and we're 64 months now after the recession supposedly ended, we'd have another 16 million jobs in this country if we'd have done the things Ronald Reagan did. We're doing just the opposite. Okay, we have about 18 to 19 million people unemployed right now. 16 million new jobs. Okay, we'd be at full employment. And can you imagine being a college graduate with college debt? Can you imagine having 3 or 4 job offers? Okay, wouldn't that be nice? Yeah, I mean, we have a record number of college graduates, this is a fact, who are making the minimum wage under this president. Minimum wage. It's like making pizzas at Casey's. It's nice pizza, but come on, you don't need a college degree to do it, right? Right, so we have another 16 million jobs if we had done the types of things that Ronald Reagan had done, and this president is doing just the opposite. It's immoral, it's unethical, and look at the burden, as Bernie talked about, we are putting on our children and grandchildren this debt. And how much do we spend on interest in a year? Does anybody know? Not that I'm counting, $232 billion in interest a year. I thought, I wonder what the interest rate is that we're paying. What's that interest rate on it? You know, what's that compound to? 1.35% is all we're paying, okay, on the debt. What happens when that rate normalizes? And normal would be about 5%, and the debt projected to be about 22 to 25 trillion when this president leaves office. So you take 5% of 22 trillion, that's a big number. That's over $1 trillion a year. How are we going to pay it? How are we going to pay it? And that's a fact. This is going to happen. This isn't conjecture. This will happen. Rates will normalize. We spend about $600 billion a year on defense right now. Interest will be $1.1 trillion. Our Social Security is about $780 billion a year. 1.1 trillion in interest. Can you imagine that? I'm a finance guy. What are we going to do? Print more money? Not a good situation, right? We've got to get this debt under control. Fourth thing is I believe in free markets and competition because I lived it. I know no better way to increase the quality of a product, decrease its cost, than the miracle of the free market system. It's given us the greatest standard of living in the world. Okay, it's been tested, it's been tried, it's been proven. Okay, and we're tending to go to more socialistic types of economic models that have proven not to work. I talk to people from Europe and they go, what are you doing? What are you doing? You're going to be as bad as us. They said, you've always been a leader. America's always been a leader. Now you're coming our direction. When we talk about free market, we need to get free market in the education system, more free market principles, and we for sure need it in healthcare. We don't need to socialize healthcare. Okay, we need to go the opposite way. The free market will bring healthcare costs down. And the fifth thing is sanctity of life. I'm pro-life from conception to the cradle to the grave. And when we talk about protecting and valuing life, not only the unborn, but the born. And by that, I mean our elderly. Okay, my mother's 84 years old. I'm concerned about what's in the law in Obamacare. There's something called IPAB, Independent Payment Advisory Boards. If you're in insurance here or medical, you're aware of these. 2015, these take effect. 2015, they take effect. It's going to be 15 bureaucrats appointed by President Obama who can basically make any kind of decision they want on Medicare reimbursement. Medicare reimbursement. Okay, and it can only be overridden, their decisions, by a supermajority of Congress. Okay, if that doesn't frighten you, it frightens me when I think of my 84-year-old mother. So I think we need to protect life, particularly our elderly, as it relates to Obamacare. Those are the 5 cornerstones. Personal responsibility, constitutionally limited government, fiscal sanity, free markets and competition, and sanctity of life. Okay, I believe that is a good foundation for us to run on. When a bill comes before me in Congress, those are the lenses I'll look at that bill through. Okay, and I will say, does that bill move the football toward our goal line of those 5 items? If it does, it most likely would have my vote. And to end, I'd just like to say, our campaign is off. We learned a lot last time. So this time, fundraising, we've raised more money than we have in the entire campaign last time. And we're number 1, I recall it. I think we're number 1 in GOP fundraising. Yep. I think there's only 1 Democrat that's ahead of us.
Right.
Yeah, so you have to have money. And this race is an open seat. It's going to be a lot of national attention. And there'll be a lot of Washington and national money coming into Iowa on both the Democrat and the Republican side. But we need to raise at least $300,000 before the primary in June. So I'm not here to make a pitch for money, but it does take money to run a campaign. It does take money to get our message out with social media, electronic media, direct mail, and those types of things. So we'd certainly appreciate any help you can give us. Organizationally, there's 406 precincts in the 1st District, 406. And our goal is to have 500 precinct captains by June 3rd. That's Paul's job. And I think we have about 300 already, right?
Yep.
So we're at 300. So we're way ahead of where we were last campaign. I think we had 100 last campaign. And name ID, I believe I have the best name ID in the district, which is 20 counties, because I've just been out there for the last 2 years, traveling this district far and wide. So we feel very good where we're at. Our strategy is to bring together all the groups in the Republican Party. You probably hear about the Civil War in the Republican Party in the state of Iowa, and you hear about this group hates that group and can't stand this group. Okay, we don't get involved in any of that kind of stuff. And what we want to do is bring all those groups together under our campaign. We feel like we're doing a very good job of that so far, and it's the only way a Republican is going to win, is we have to have all those groups excited, enthused, and on board. So that's an update of where we're at. Once again, I want to thank Bernie and Barbara Cooper for your hospitality, and the host committee. Appreciate it very much. I'm going to stick around as long as you want to talk and answer questions. I will stick around and answer your questions. But once again, it's great to be back in Cedar Rapids, home of Zach Johnson. If anybody saw that tournament this weekend. That guy is amazing. He's a great example for our youth of somebody that has hard work, determination, persistence, and belief in himself. Amazing. I guess he wasn't even number 1 on his high school golf team here at Regis, and he wasn't number 1 at Drake. And now, I mean, he's beating Tiger Woods. I mean, it's just amazing. I love the story. I love the guy. So it's always good to be here in Cedar Rapids. And thanks so much for coming, because there's so many other things you could be doing. Appreciate it very, very much, sincerely. And I'll hang around as long as you want to talk politics.